Yeah, the big talking point in the first half, of course, was the penalty against the impressive Rico Lewis. Jim Campbell, did you think it was a penalty? Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ramble Reacts. England end the calendar year unbeaten, and Italy squeezed through against Ukraine. I'm Marcus Speller.
And I'm Jim Campbell.
Welcome, one and all, to another Ramble Reacts after a barn-burning England game. My goodness, Jim Campbell. Have you caught your breath?
8-1 on aggregate. Have I caught my breath? My breath is all over the shop. It's all over the room. I've got breath nets to catch it. It's just, what a game. What an end to the campaign.
People are going to complain that it was a bad end to the campaign. But might I say that it was a really good start and middle to the campaign, which is why they didn't need a strong end to the campaign.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, they're putting the feet up a little bit, aren't they? They're resting in the middle of a domestic season. It was fine. It was what we got, so it's going to have to do. It's a shame, isn't it? Because it was a lineup full of quite exciting players, but it's yet another reminder that football is not played on paper. It's played on quite bad grass in some circumstances.
Yeah, look, all sort of jokes aside, England did beat North Macedonia 8-1 on aggregate, of course, if you take both matches into account. But no, it wasn't England. It wasn't a good performance from England.
No,
sorry about the bollocks. We know that. But one man who did have a good game, Jim Campbell, was the referee.
He had a good run around. Sure, he got his steps in. If there's one thing you can say about that referee, he got his steps in. Good
That's
Lord.
how it came across to me. He was just like, yeah.
It's one of those things where when a commentator's going in quite hard on a refereeing performance, as Dion Dublin was, it's tempting to think, are they kind of being a bit, over the top here? But absolutely not. He was dreadful. Absolutely dreadful.
Yeah. The big talking point in the first half, of course, was the penalty against the impressive Rico Lewis. Jim Campbell, did you think it was a penalty?
No, I don't think it was a penalty in a million years. I do think that Harry Maguire was a little bit lucky to get away with what looked definitely more of a penalty about 5-10 minutes before that, for sure. So maybe he was evening it out, as you're not meant to do. There were a lot of really quite odd decisions, but yeah, we sort of, I suppose it evened out. As I just referenced there.
But you can't have the argument about evening out because
no. It's
checked by VAR, so you can't unless they do. It's a Luis Diaz at Spurs situation where they go, "Ooh, actually, since you've restarted it, we've looked at it loads more times, and it probably was a penalty." That's the only way, which clearly is not how it goes down. So the idea
it took forever on the offside goal, which was so clearly offside from the first replay as well. Anyway, let's not get bogged down in sort of VAR and stuff like that. The penalty wasn't a penalty. The non-penalty probably was a penalty.
Yeah.
You can't score rebounds in a shootout, so that's big from Jordan Pickford as well. So I think that's another message sent to Europe from North Macedonia tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the messages that our country have been sending to Europe recently haven't been particularly positive.
It's not been ideal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So maybe that's something a little bit more positive, but ultimately it ended in the back of the net. But Rico Lewis, though, despite that bad decision against him, he looked the part, didn't he?
He did.
He didn't look phased at all. I think when you're an international manager, it's kind of like a trial, really. For some of these players, it kind of is and it isn't. I mean, obviously, he's a very, very young man. He's got the world at his feet. If all things well, he should go on to have a very, very good career. Guardiola loves him, of course. You can see why. But when you're an international manager, you are looking for things. Of course, you're looking for good performance and all the usuals. But you're looking for the body language. You're looking for all of those players have got quality. So you know it's there, but can they give you that quality in a very short space of time? You don't have a full season to work with these players. What's the body language like? What's the confidence like, and so on? And Rico Lewis looked like he just thought, right, well, I'm just going to play like I have been doing all the way through up the Man City academy. The minutes he's got for Manchester City, where he's done well, and he just translated that straight onto the pitch for England. So he looks one that who knows, Jim, could stake a claim for the Euros next summer.
Absolutely. I mean, given the circumstances, with left back being a bit of a problem position at the moment, it would be very silly to not have a look at him. He is clearly a very, very good talent, and this is an opportunity to bed him into the team without any friction. So I think he passed the audition. The penalty you can discount because it's just nonsense. It's really, really silly. He didn't let it get to him. He also spent a lot of the time essentially inverting. He spent a lot of time in the midfield and quite high up the pitch at points when we were playing against a very sort of packed defence, which is ideal because you get the extra man in there, even though it wasn't particularly effective. But that again isn't his fault, is it? I think he passed his audition really with flying colours, and he is the story essentially of what was otherwise a pretty forgettable night. Although I will say. There's a lot of negativity around England after performances like this. There always has been, and realistically there always will be. But even in games like this, where it's really stodgy and it's boring, it's not particularly entertaining, it's frustrating. The technical level of the players has raised so much that it's still so much more enjoyable than it was, maybe 15 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever, when there was just nothing, where it was just sideways crab football when nothing happened. And it's even this is better than that. So there's something there.
And it's rare for England, for any side, quite frankly, but certainly for England to go a calendar year unbeaten.
Yeah.
And I think, again, like you earn the right, actually, to have performances like this. We don't want the performances that have been the last two games, of course. You want to be entertained. But again, fans, especially when fans are so desperate for success, such as England fans, and that's understandable because England have underachieved for so long. You look at the resources England has as a country, but more specifically in football, the riches that the FA have are far greater.
The population as well.
The population size, the tradition, the history, and the players that have been produced over the years. England are the great the passion, exactly, Jim. England are the great underachievers of international football. We used to sometimes bracket Spain in that, and it's fair to say they put that to bed quite emphatically.
That has been well and truly siested.
It has. And they could live off that for, I don't know, 100 years or whatever it is. And so I understand that England's so desperate. But again, we often say this, people have short memories. Now, that doesn't mean to say that the performance therefore wasn't that bad against Malta. Or therefore, actually England did play really well against Malta. I don't mean that at all. But away to North Macedonia, they are tricky games, this. The reason why people could get annoyed about that is, it was a bit stodgy, as you described, Jim, but England thumped them 7-0 before. The brilliance of the previous performance is almost kind of, they're hoisted by their own petard, basically. In putting some of these performances and entertaining, despite people thinking that Gareth Southgate is very, very conservative. And I think it's difficult to end the year or the calendar year on a high because it is in the club season. Ending the sort of the if you like, the school year, the football season on a high with England was done last time, of course, with that win against North Macedonia. But don't forget that the previous year, England were beaten 4-0 at home against Hungary, and it looked
like things were going to get bad. Like
it did.
Back then, you'd be surprised to hear that Southgate was still here. It was that bad.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Southgate out was trending on Twitter. But I mean, it is a cesspit, so I don't really want to.
A lot of those are bots, right? Presumably.
Exactly.
Or have of similar mental capacity.
Although this is a stat that goes against Southgate, though. England have gone 2 consecutive away Euro qualifiers without a win for the first time since March 2007 under Steve McLaren.
Oh,
so maybe alarm bells are ringing, Jim.
Yeah, you do worry about which vegetable he will be photoshopped as. Possibly even an aubergine, which would be absolutely damning. I will say, before the game, he made a lot of, he spoke a lot about aiming for being the number 1 ranked team in the world, because it essentially means you're doing everything right, and talking about how the standards you have to have and the commitment you have to have and the approach that you have to have for that. And the team have just sort of gone, nah. We all play for clubs, Gareth.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of a domestic season. You know how hard that is?
You don't get a medal for that, do you, Gareth?
Yeah, no, it's just you get what you're given, boss.
I know. I understand what Southgate's saying, of course.
Yeah, I think privately he'll be frustrated that those words haven't sunk in.
But I mean, Jim, on the basis of the 2 games we've just seen, of course, England, you want to keep that winning mentality. We spoke about Scotland yesterday on the podcast, how they only won in their last 5 or something like that, and teams don't want to lose sort of that kind of momentum. But I kind of think that it's a long time in footballing terms, a long time from between now and March for the next couple of friendlies. And even then for the tournament, I do not think these 2 performances have any bearing at all on what will happen, either in March or at the tournament, of course, for England, Scotland, and for everybody else, quite frankly.
For Cole Palmer, Rico Lewis, Ollie Watkins, 1 or 2 others, it will be significant. Otherwise, it'll be completely forgotten about, I would think. It's just one of those quirks of the nature of the qualifying process, isn't it? That you get games that are just a little bit dead towards the end of it. I mean, there's been some results across Europe tonight that are interesting. A lot of them were pretty drab. My highlight of the whole evening, I think, actually came before the game in an interview Harry Kane did with Channel 4, where he was asked, they showed that famous picture of him and Thomas Müller and I think Manuel Neuer in Lederhosen, and the interviewer put it to him. He said, "Harry, did you ever expect to be wearing Lederhosen in your career?" And Kane answered by saying that it's just part of the culture and joining in, and footballers' Oktoberfest experience is probably quite different from how it would be if you went with your mates or on your own. And I was struck by that because it just made me question what sort of person goes to Oktoberfest on their own, and if that's something that Harry Kane might consider were he not a professional footballer. Like, how committed to the sesh do you have to be that it would even cross your mind to go to fly to Germany on your own to just get your lederhosen on and get stuck in? And I think that says more about the game than anything, that this is the thing I've taken away from it.
Definitely. I think... But mind you, though, would it not be the type of place where you could just muck in with people? And
absolutely. But you'd have to be an extrovert. You'd have to know that you could thrive in a scenario like that.
Maybe.
And you'd obviously have to be able to hold your alcohol as well. Because if you were a sort of fun-loving party guy, but you're an absolute disaster after 2 drinks, it's the worst place for you.
You go to the darts on your own, though, Jim.
I told you not to tell anyone about that.
Campbell.
You know I wear that mask.
There he goes. Whenever I hear that, I think of you. Well, good luck to Harry at the Oktoberfest, which, of course, has been and gone, but you'd imagine he would go to next year's one as well. Harry Kane is one of a few players, including Jordan Pickford, Declan Rice and Harry Maguire, to have featured in every game for England. Presumably that's that calendar year, Rory. In the qualifying campaign. Yeah, okay. Harry Kane, of course, is one of a few players, including Jordan Pickford, Declan Rice and Harry Maguire, to feature in every game for England in this qualifying campaign. Kane is obviously, he's there. Pickford will be the number 1. Declan Rice is crucial in that midfield. And Harry Maguire will start for England at the Euros. Yeah. I mean, barring injury or complete and utter disaster, but even then...
And he will give away the ball from switching the play.
Well, yeah, so I have to say that even I was slightly concerned by that. I mean, I know that the whole performance has been a bit of a drop-off and they've all been a little bit relaxed. But are you still concerned about Maguire in defence? There'll be a lot of people who are. Or are you just accepting the fact that he will be next to Stones? But, of course, Stones is currently out injured.
I would answer that question, Marcus, by saying that, yes, it concerns me. And, yes, I have accepted that he will be alongside John Stones in defence. Now, I think the criticism of Maguire is over the top, hasn't it? It has essentially become a bit of a meme, like a sort of silly, fun thing to join in with for people that are just looking for a pretty basic run-of-the-mill opinion to have a bit of fun with. But he has a mistake in him. We know he has a rick in him. And I don't think it's outrageous to say that. So I am just sort of hoping that if that does happen, that it happens at a time where England can weather it and it isn't a high-profile last-minute moment or anything like that.
Yeah. Would you think that in the friendlies in March, say John Stones is back from injury, he's in the side, would you would you want to see him maybe partnered with Mark Gay? Because clearly Southgate likes Gay. He's started. He's seen some minutes. I would say he's probably third choice centre half at the moment. Would you think? Oh, hang on a minute. That's a bit more like. Or do you think maybe too little before the tournament?
I think what will probably happen, and I think what is the sensible thing to do, is that Gay will start one and Maguire will start another alongside Stones if they're all fit. I think you're right. He's not put a foot wrong for England in the games he's played. He looks really assured, looks really comfortable there, and I think having someone ready to step up because he's played and knows that he's in the manager's thinking is probably a good thing to have going into the tournament as well. It's not ideal to have a situation where none of the other defenders expect to play, because you never know what's going to happen when you get there. And I think I have, like a lot of England fans, I have accepted that Maguire will be there and that it will make a lot of people angry regardless of how Maguire plays. But, as I've said, having that backup ready to go is, I think, probably the most pragmatic option, and we know he loves a bit of pragmatism.
Ollie Watkins started the game and has been in the squad now a few times for England with his club form and with the starts for the national side. You would think that he's now second fiddle to Harry Kane in that striker role.
Yeah.
Do you think he's done enough, or do you think people will still be waiting for Ivan Toney to come back from his ban?
Yeah, I think that's going to be an inevitable story in the Kane's understudy, and it's going to be a shootout between the two of them, you would think, unless somebody else really stakes a claim from out of nowhere. I
mean, you watch Arsenal a lot, of course, and you see Eddie Nketiah playing, who has been called up recently. Watkins is ahead of him clearly in the pecking order at the moment. But from what you've seen of Eddie Nketiah, you see him more than I do certainly. Do you think Nketiah would could he stake a claim? Could he, in your opinion, who would you rather be the understudy to Kane?
I would go with Watkins or Toney over Eddie Nketiah. As much as I like Eddie Nketiah, he is quite inconsistent, and he kind of drifts out of games sometimes. He's got this amazing knack of feeling like he might be about to, lose some ground in terms of everyone's opinion of him, and then he'll pop up and score a goal. So he is great for that. He's not particularly effective off the bench, which is absolutely crucial in that role. So I feel for Watkins tonight, because he only had 11 touches, but he also barely had any service. And as we know, his strength is running onto balls, and he didn't have the opportunity to make the most of his game. And I think Southgate said before the game was to the effect of Watkins doesn't have to adapt to England's game. England have to adapt to Watkins' game, and they didn't do that. So I feel for him, and I would hope that he wouldn't be judged too harshly. I mean, worst case scenario in his mind is being hauled off for Harry Kane, who comes on and essentially immediately causes a goal, even if he didn't actually score it himself. But it was a difficult night for him, but he wasn't alone in that. A lot of players struggle to make stuff happen. I was writing the line, "Do we need more from Grealish?" And about 3 seconds later, he scored the goal that was eventually disallowed for being offside. And he woke up a bit after that. I thought he was a lot better, and he posed a few more questions of the defence. But I feel like he doesn't break the lines in the way that he once did. And perhaps it's harsh to single him out, but I feel like he's probably quite some way from starting for England.
I know what you mean. I felt the same, actually. I think Grealish cuts a kind of frustrated figure at the moment. You saw that a couple of times when the defenders sort of niggled at him, and he turned around and he was a bit unhappy. And I think, Grealish has had a lot more treatment than that. He's had to deal with more, and I think he's probably frustrating. He's not getting the game time at Man City. He's not starting for England. It'll be Foden ahead of him on that left side, presuming that he does go with Foden on the left side, which I think he would. I have to say Rashford was probably ahead of him in the pecking order as well, potentially. And I think with Grealish, we knew this would happen at Manchester City. He's got to fit in the system. At Aston Villa, he was a maverick, and we loved watching him play. But that was a while ago now, of course. He's become a better player at Manchester City. There's no two ways about that. I mean, he won a treble for crying out loud last year, and he was starting a lot of games in that side. So you can't argue with that. But this season, he said at the start of the season, you kind of look around and think, what is there to achieve this season? And we know Grealish can be what would I? How can I put it? We know Grealish can come out with the odd sort of funny comment here and there, but that comment I thought was maybe a little bit telling, and I don't think Guardiola would have liked to have heard that. And perhaps, with that, it won't just be that, of course, but with Doku coming in, who's been brilliant, of course, and whatnot, he's not playing that much for Manchester City, and I think his he's very predictable. If you're a fullback, you just don't let him go down the line, and he cuts in. It's every time. The defender just goes, great, pass him on. I've done my job, and I think that you want something a bit more out of Grealish. He's still a quality player. I think he'll probably go to the Euros because he's well liked within the camp, and that is important. And he's suddenly become a bad player overnight, for crying out loud. But I do think that he may struggle to find some game time ahead of the Euros, and then perhaps even at the Euros themselves.
How about Trent Alexander-Arnold? How do you think he did in the midfield tonight?
Yeah, I think it's a funny one for Trent. And I think it's hard to judge people in these games because it's not like England have played their full strength side. I know they weren't far off it. I don't want to play that card too much. But if you play your full strength side and it's a game that they need to win and everyone's on it, you might see a different level of performance. You saw him away in Malta. He was great in that game. Against North Macedonia at Old Trafford, was feeding Saka all day long and so on. So you know what he can do. Harsh to single him out. I don't think he'll start for England. I think that he'll definitely be a squad player. He is playing... I know for Liverpool he does play. He can play a bit of a hybrid role and he can join the midfield as we know. Klopp likes to kind of have a little tinker there and so on. But he is primarily a fullback. He's being asked to play in a slightly different position. I think he can play it, but I think when it comes to the crunch, I think that again England will go with Rice and Phillips and obviously Bellingham if when he's fit. But I think Gallagher would be ahead of Alexander-Arnold as well. So I don't think he's going to play that much. But Southgate is interested in him. He is giving him some minutes, albeit in the lesser games. So we shall have to wait and see what he does with that. But it was a frustrating night for him though against North Macedonia.
It was. I don't think any player will come away from it not being frustrated though. To be fair,
indeed. But ultimately though, a very positive qualification campaign I thought for England. Beating Italy twice as well.
Yeah, that's way more important.
Yeah, and I know people will say, this is not a particularly good Italian side or whatever. It's still a decent team. I mean, I know they've just squeezed through, of course, against Ukraine, and they have sacked their manager recently, and they've got a better one in, and, we'll see what he can do, old Spalletti. We know he's he does like to play in a certain way, and they could be very entertaining come the tournament. But still, I'm not worried at all about these recent performances for England, and I'm still hopeful with regards to next summer. But Italy did go through. They squeezed past Ukraine 0-0.
Squeezed is an interesting way of phrasing it.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of the chat, obviously didn't watch the games, I was watching England, but the chat seemed to be Italy were probably the better side.
Yeah.
But, we talk about poor refereeing decisions in the England game. That one at the end when Mudryk collects the ball in the box and goes past...
92nd minute.
Goes past, was it Brian Cristante? It's a penalty. It's a penalty
Absolutely
all day long.
Nailed on. It's so unjust.
I mean, they checked it loads of times from number of different angles and so on. But there is an angle which is definitive.
Yeah. Well, if there's clearly there must be something that they've taken into consideration that you and I aren't aware of then, because it looks absolutely stonewall from the replays I've seen.
I mean, I know it's crucial because you could be deciding the fate of one of these countries whether they qualify or not. But to not give that, the only argument could be, did Mudryk leave his leg in there and he was looking for it? I don't think I think it happens too quick.
No, I don't think he does.
And then of course you see people on Twitter going, well, Ceferin, the head of UEFA, did say, it would be a great shame if Italy weren't in the tournament and all this.
Come on.
It's, let's not go down that road. But Ukraine, they will feel very, very hard done by indeed. Jorginho started for Italy in that game. He didn't get a chance to take a penalty. He's missed, I think, is it 4 on the trot he's missed for Italy?
Yeah, and it is a trot.
Yes, and it goes back to the Euros as well. Of course, he
Yeah.
missed in the shootout. Well, his agent kind of stuck up for him with regards to penalties, saying that Jorginho he should keep taking penalties, and he said, jokes aside, only those who take penalties miss penalties.
I hadn't thought about it like
There's
that.
just conspiracy, Jim. He said penalties are always a lottery, and there's always a goalkeeper to beat.
Yeah,
What does
again,
this guy want?
this guy's a visionary.
Well, he would have missed that one against Switzerland because he hit it over the bar. Goalkeepers have improved a lot in recent years. In 10 years' time, only 1 in 10 penalties will go in.
Imagine having the confidence to say that out loud. Imagine like thinking that you're such a deep thinker and such a visionary that holds any weight whatsoever.
It's magnificent. In 10 years' time, only 1 in 10 penalties will be scored. So each year, there'll be a 10% decline. And we can all watch this. If you start seeing penalties being missed, you go, hang on a minute, Jorginho's agent was right. So yeah, 1 in 10 penalties. Shootouts will go on for hours.
Yeah, you'll concede a penalty and think, yes, we got a goal kick.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you won't care about conceding a penalty. The man's going through on goal. Just take him out because he'll probably miss. Nutter.
It's like Keys and Gray all those years ago, wasn't it? Are penalties getting harder to score, Andy? No.
It's about the same. It is about the same as it's always been. Yeah. So, Jorginho will get a chance to see if he can. He can make amends for Italy in March, of course, and then at the Euros, because they are going to be there. And you saw the scenes of celebration with the Italians. I mean, Donnarumma looked delighted that they qualified. It's not been a good qualification campaign for Italy, but they will be better by the time the tournament comes around.
It's a cliche to talk about Italy, never been fancied or starting tournaments slowly and et cetera, but every now and then they just pop up and win one. So...
Yeah.
You can't really argue with that.
And with Spalletti in charge as well.
And the pain of missing the World Cup, being the European champions and not being at the World Cup, it has got to sting really badly. So they'll be desperate to have a good tournament, and I, for one, hope they don't.
Exactly, yeah. Beyond though, I understand that if teams haven't finished in the top 2, there's still the playoffs and all that. But it would have been strange though had the holders not been
absolutely
at a tournament. So,
I hope we are nowhere near them in any sort of draw because
Yep. All agreed, Jim. All agreed. Don't need to go there. Let's come back to these islands. It was a famous night for Northern Ireland. Of course, they beat Denmark 2-0 at Windsor Park. Obviously too little too late with regards to the qualification campaign, but good to get a victory against a decent side who will be in the Euros in Germany next summer.
20% possession, 2 counter-attacking goals. Yes, please.
There you go.
Perfect.
See, a goal for every 10% possession. I feel like I'm turning into Jorginho's agent suddenly.
Yeah.
Let's leave that.
Not a bad ratio, that.
Not a bad ratio at all. So yeah, I was pleased for them to finish on a good note because it has been a bit of a disappointing campaign for them, of course. Yeah,
this is the other side of that coin, isn't it? We sort of complain about the last 2 England games being a bit flat and feeling a bit meaningless. When you're already out, it's even worse.
Yeah, exactly.
It's real. I think probably. Trauma is obviously too strong a word, but it can't be a positive experience for the players and the coaching staff involved in those games. It's a reminder of your own failure, essentially. So to get a win out of something like that and look ahead to the next campaign is the best you can do. Yeah,
having lost 7 out of 10, it's not what you're after. Obviously, San Marino bottom of the group. That group was quite incredible, really. Denmark have gone through with 22 points top. Slovenia second. Finland squeezed into third. Kazakhstan, had they have they lost 2-1 to Slovenia. Had they have won that game, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that they would have gone through in second spot. So it was all to play for right at the death there.
It was.
In another one of the groups, Group E, Albania topped the group. Czech Republic joined them in the Euros, qualifying automatically. I love the fact that Albania, they were already qualified. They had the Faroe Islands at home. And you think, that's a nice way. A team who don't often qualify for tournaments. I don't believe they've ever been to the World Cup. They've been to the Euros. They're there. And you think, why not? You've got a little gimme there against the Faroes. I would say no disrespect, but, they're crap. Let's be honest, Jim.
Yeah.
Go out, score a few goals or whatever. They drew 0-0. 0-0. Can't be bothered. We're already there.
That is a disgrace.
Give a shit. We know they're not going to score.
It's absolutely outrageous.
It's a famous point for the Pharaohs.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Got to get a very, very respectable clean sheet away to a side who topped their group.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
They'll be dancing on the streets tonight, you would think. There we are, everybody. Thank you very much for listening to this Ramble Reacts. We'll be back on Wednesday alongside Vish and Andy. In the meantime, find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram and YouTube at Football Ramble. And remember to subscribe on your podcast app. Of course, more international football will be... we're not done yet. We're not done yet. We'll round it all up on Wednesday. Wales, they're just about still alive, and there's some other interesting little bits and pieces going on. But until then, thank you, Jim Campbell.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Gareth Southgate. Lots of love. See you soon.
Cheers for watching another fantastic clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Make sure you click like on this video and subscribe to the channel, which means you will not miss a single upload.